Hey everyone, welcome again to another LinkedIn Live with Launch. We're doing another learning session today, and today is all about your GA4. The title of this talk is GA4 First Aid Kit, Patch Up the Problems and Flex That Data. And this was a talk that was delivered at Building Brands, a brilliant conference in the Southwest, I think just over a week ago. But let's first of all find out a little bit about who's presenting this. So Ian and Darcy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Thanks very much. I'm Ian. I'm the head of data and analytics at Launch. We did this last week at Building Brands, and it's got some really good feedback, and we want to share that with everyone today.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm Darcy. I'm a senior measurement analyst here at Launch. I've been with Launch for just over 2 years, and as Ian and Jay have said, we delivered this to Building Brands last week, and it was really good. So I'm glad we have the opportunity to share it here on your LinkedIn Live.
Brilliant. And I know how much work goes into putting these together. And this has come from research from, you asked the community, what were some of the biggest problems that people had with GA4? But not only that, it's also our own clients and the battles they have with it. And I'm going to disappear in a minute and I will field any questions. So those of you who are watching this live on YouTube or LinkedIn, please do drop questions or comments in the comments section, and we'll try and get to those. But if not, if you're watching this or watching this back, then do reach out to us on our LinkedIn channel, drop us a message, and we will be able to maybe cover those questions in a follow-up session. So without any further ado, I'm going to remove myself from the stage and say it's over to you guys.
Thanks, Jay. Nice. So yeah, Jay introduced that brilliantly. This presentation will be focusing on your GA4 First Aid Kit, where we're going to help you patch up the problems and flex that data to help you use GA4 more efficiently. We'll be specifically talking to you about the 5 headaches that a lot of marketers endure. As Jay mentioned, we sort of fielded these questions out, and speaking to a lot of clients, this is what we believe, the important things to address. We'll also have the 5 remedies as well, and we'll also be able to share our top 5 secrets with you that we use at Launch. Nice. Next slide, please, Ian. Perfect. So speaking to many marketers, people often complain that your GA4 may look different to UA, that your numbers aren't matching your ad reporting. Conversions may have disappeared overnight and seemingly have fallen off a cliff, and just generally that you miss UA. And we hear you, and we've definitely felt that those issues and those headaches. But this is this sort of we're going to share with you the remedies to these problems that you're sort of facing. So the 5 headaches that we will be addressing today are data integrity troubles. We'll be looking at unassigned traffic issues, your metric mayhem that may occur in your reporting. Following on to that is your reporting roadblocks. And then we'll be looking at some segmentation insights. So we'll be covering, hopefully, some key areas there for you.
Cool. So headache 1 is data integrity troubles. So we've seen where there's inconsistent data within GA4, and we have a lot of clients that say, how can I trust what we're seeing in there? There's talk about one version of the truth. There's talking about why GA4 says one thing and why another platform says another. So it's about understanding actually how you can go into GA4 and understand whether that data is correct or not, and how you can actually see and test that yourself. So here you can see some key events in that screenshot. The key events are 0. Why is that? And so what we've got here for you is a remedy to actually audit your own tracking setup. So in GA4, there's something called debug view, which allows you to actually see what GA4 is picking up. So you can visit your website, use your website as any user would do. So go across and add things to the cart or fill out a form. And then if you look into your GA4 debug view, you can actually see those events coming through. There are times where we've seen 2 page views come through, which then obviously would indicate that the page view is double counting, or the conversion isn't coming through. So that's why your key events are 0. If you can actually see that within GA4, then you can have that as a basis to speak to your in-house team or your agency to say, I can see that these are not coming through and here is why. And then that will allow you to go and audit and fix that for you moving forward. So here we have sort of the mystery of the disappearing add to cart. So we've got a story to tell based on that. We had a client before that had no add to cart events showing. So when you looked at the funnel, there was people viewing items and people looking at the products, but then also purchasing them, but adding to the cart was missing. So it broke that funnel completely. So using GTM, so Google Tag Manager, is something that you have to use to see debug view. If you log into Google Tag Manager and preview your website using GTM and then go to GA4 for your debug view, you'll be able to see what events are coming through and how they're created. And in this case, after taking a look under the hood, we noticed that actually add to cart was spelt incorrectly. It was add to basket. So this is where someone has made a choice to make that event. So the event was still being pushed through to GA4, but because it wasn't add to cart, it wasn't fitting into the funnel. So instantly we were able to see, without any in-depth developer work, that we can actually see the add to cart was the reason why it wasn't working, because it was called add to basket instead. And so this is what I'm talking about. So this equals our secret that we're going to share with you today, is use debug view in GA4 alongside Google Tag Manager preview mode. So on the left hand side here, you can see if you go to settings and then data display, and then you'll see debug view in your GA4. But alongside that, in another tab in Google Chrome, go to Google Tag Manager, click the preview button at the top right hand corner and visit your website. And then in preview mode, you'll see all the events that are firing here. And then you'll be able to see in GA4 what GA4 is picking up. And if it doesn't match, then that's the reason why your data in GA4 isn't 100% correct.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's a really powerful secret, and I think it's one of my favorites to use when debugging. Next, we'll be looking at unassigned traffic. So unassigned traffic often shows up in GA4 reports. If you've seen this, you're not alone. It's not just isolated to your GA4 property. And it's basically where GA4 cannot determine where that traffic has come from. It can happen for lots of reasons. So if you've got missing UTM parameters, if you have untracked offline channels or technical issues with your tracking where triggers aren't correctly set up, or as Ian mentioned, with that add to cart naming conventions are wrong, or ad blockers, and also internal traffic that isn't filtered properly, and cookie consent is a massive one as well. So there is a really large array of reasons that this can be reporting in your GA4. Why is it frustrating? Well, it's annoying that you can't see that unassigned channel, that unassigned traffic, especially because often it can account for a really large percent of your traffic. It will mean that you can't calculate that ROI properly, and unassigned traffic is basically just, hiding and causing you to have a blind spot in your data. So our remedy to that is to make sure everything is tagged. So make sure that you have your UTM parameters on all your campaigns. Make sure you audit your landing pages. You can identify where that unassigned traffic is actually landing, and that often reveals where the issue may stem from, what campaigns are missing those tags. Review your consent mode. So if your cookie banner is blocking GA4, enable consent mode and user provided data in GA4 to fill those gaps. Speak to your measurement team if you don't know how to do that, or come to us, because your consent mode setup can be quite complicated. So that can often be the culprit. And one tip as well is to set alerts. What we mean by this is, in GA4, you can set up these anomaly detections to sort of help you quickly spot when these unexpected spikes or even drops happen in your unassigned traffic. So it can allow you to sort of pick up the issues before anything's impacted in your reporting. But finally, make sure you check those secondary dimensions in your GA4 reports. That's a really quick fix. It's something that's my go-to. And it just allows you to go a bit more granular and inspect a bit further without doing anything too drastic to your tracking or anything like that at that stage. So that's a really key remedy there. Looking at a story time, as I mentioned, we have seen many cases where unassigned traffic does creep into GA4. most recently, when reviewing a client's GA4, I noticed that unassigned traffic had been steadily increasing over time. So whilst it wasn't immediately obvious when you're looking at either, you know, a day-by-day comparison or even week-on-week, when I expanded that period and looked over the 90-day date range, it was quite glaringly obvious that there had been that steady rise, which obviously wasn't ideal. And at first, it was like a total mystery as to where that was coming from. But what I did was I used those GA4 secondary dimensions, which was my last point in the previous slide. And I could see that a lot of traffic that was unassigned was actually coming from ChatGPT. That's why GA4 couldn't assign it a channel, because it fell into that unassigned bracket where there was no category for it. So the solution to that, after seeing ChatGPT in the session source medium, was to create a custom channel group. I set the rules so any traffic from ChatGPT would automatically be bucketed in that rather than in unassigned. You can do that to any channel. You know, you can any sort of new or potentially an unrecognized channel that's coming into your GA4, you can set that into your own custom channel group, so you no longer see it falling into that unassigned. And the result of doing that was unassigned sessions completely reduced, and our reports were much clearer. We could see much better attribution, conversions and revenue, and even engagement was much clearer. And it did help ROI insights as well, which is obviously very important. So it can just allow you to see much more clearer. And it also allows you to understand user behavior better as well. So you can optimize your strategy accordingly, rather than feeling like you don't know what traffic is doing what, where it's come from, and just have much better insights generally into your data. So following from that, our secret weapon here is to create your own channel group. Since the default channel groupings don't capture every source, you know, like I said, especially these newer ones like the ChatGPT, partnerships, or even QR codes we've seen, building your own custom channel group can help you define the rules, so you know your own unique traffic gets bucketed correctly. I've sort of covered the benefits, but you know, this fixes the unassigned traffic. It allows you to have those clearer reports, again, more accurate attribution, and most importantly, you can tailor your GA4's reporting to your business and not the other way around. I just want to mention a highlight that we sort of saw here with the changes I made to this client's unassigned. Over the last 90 days, unassigned went down from 25% down to 1%, which is massive. So that's why it's really important to utilize that tool in GA4. But one thing to note that's important, and I sort of fell victim to this when I was first setting up my own channel group, was check the order of your channel rules in settings. So in GA4, it reads it top to bottom. And what this means is, if referral, for example, was above your custom ChatGPT channel group, ChatGPT would still land in referral. So you would still have probably limited visibility as to what your traffic is doing. So just be really aware of where you're placing these custom channel groups in order in that setting section, because you don't want to still be blind when you've gone through all the effort to create that for your business.
Nice. And so headache 3, we were told about metric mayhem. So one of the things that we get from our clients as well is around how metrics are just not aligning with data sources. And across GA4, there's literally a report for everything. And even those reports are not aligning. The bottom line is that they're not meant to. So every report in GA4 is meant to have its own unique report on those unique figures. For example, you've got, traffic acquisition versus user acquisition. So when you look at those two reports, they may be reporting on revenue that's very similar to those different channels, but they're never going to align. And so what our remedy here for you is to really utilize the exploration report in GA4. With that, you can create custom bespoke reports that can detail down to the granular level of what you want to look at, whether it is a new user, or whether it is a first-time user, or whether it's a returning user. And then you can build those reports in exploration, and then essentially you can have those reports shared to anybody in the business, or which I'll talk about a little bit later on, you can then put them into your main reporting as well. So what you need to do is on the left hand side on those menus, you've got your home screen, your report screen, and just underneath it, explorations, and you can start to build tables, and very similar to Looker Studio, you can start to build reports and funnels in there as well. And you can simply put whatever you need out of all of the metrics. You'll have a long list of metrics that you can pick from. One thing to note with this as well is please ensure that your data retention is set to 14 months. They're mostly set to 2 months, especially if it's a new GA4 property, because in Explore report, if you don't have it to 14 months, you won't be able to go back to year-on-year data. You can only go back to two months. So really important that you go to settings, data retention, and set that down to 14 months as well. We had the story for this is we had a client come to us to say their Shopify revenue does not match Google Analytics revenue. We hear this a lot, and it's never going to match exactly the same due to all of the privacy issues with GA4, cookie banners, but also the reliance of a browser side pixel that's set for GA4. But in this case, the difference was absolutely huge, and there was something definitely wrong with that. So we used things like the GA4 exploration report. We started to drill down into where this was happening, and we started to notice that actually GA4 was just collecting the data that it thought was okay to collect it. It wasn't the fact that the tracking was physically broken. The reports were just reporting on what it was seeing. So what we did find out, it was actually the cookie banner that was causing this issue. At Building Brands, we asked the audience this question: if when a user declines a cookie, should GA4 A, not load at all, or B, load but remain in a denied and limited state? Interestingly, in the room, not a lot of people put their hands up for A, but some people did put their hands up. And this is something that we see quite a lot, where your cookie banner is loaded and it doesn't load GA4 at all. That's not how it should work. GA4 should load in the background, and it should load in what's called a denied state. So it understands the user's consent at that time. They haven't accepted the cookie banner, or if they do decline the cookie banner, it should still load in that denied state. And what that does is it allows it to collect standard metrics from GA4 to send over, so from your website to send over to GA4, but it also allowed you to model the data in case it needs to. So for example, someone has declined the cookie banner. It's not that we don't track them at all. It's about that we track them whilst adhering to their consent, and then GA4 will be able to model that data for you in GA4 reports. So you're not losing out on that data. And with that secret, what we've got here is called user provided data, and that is set up in GA4. If you go to settings, data collection, and then there's a toggle there that you turn that on. What this essentially does is if you're logged in to any other Google product, so Google Chrome, YouTube, or even Gmail, if you're logged into them and you're browsing the internet, even if you decline a cookie banner, Google will be able to take the information that it's got on you whilst using that product. Let's take Chrome, for example, and it will be able to hash that data, but then be able to send that back to GA4 of where you've come from and model that data. So it doesn't give you exactly where they've come from, but it's able to understand by using that information, user provided data, to be able to give you that much clearer report in GA4 that you wouldn't have got if you just completely wiped out GA4 from declining the cookie banner.
Perfect. So next we'll be looking at reporting roadblocks as a headache. We all know that reporting can be a challenge, especially when building from scratch. And the GA4's metric mayhem often stems from inconsistent and cluttered reports. UA, just to give it a mention, used to have really easy access reports. And now it can be overwhelming because in GA4, you're trying to find those important KPIs, and they seemingly are buried beneath lots of numbers. So our solution for reporting roadblocks is to utilize the pre-built templates. So GA4's pre-built templates like user acquisition, engagement, monetization, they're really handy, especially if you're a bit inexperienced or new to the GA4 interface. By using these, it can build that consistent foundation before you head on to customize your reports for your goals. And these templates can save time, so anyone new to GA4 again can learn the logic a bit easier. But following on from that, a bit more advanced, you can utilize the GA4 reports by building your own custom dashboards in the library, but do this strategically. What we suggest is to focus on the why and not the noise. And what we mean by that is don't build dashboards that are overloaded with unnecessary numbers. Make sure they're only answering your key business questions. So the library in GA4 can turn into this structured, goal-driven hub, rather than just jumping into GA4 and not knowing where to turn. You know that the library is where your whole team are locked in and are aware and use consistent reporting across that specific date range, or however you are reporting. You know, everyone is looking at the same thing, which is really important. Also, you can highlight key metrics. So to avoid this reporting roadblock, in GA4, you can highlight metrics to guide attention to what matters. So, you know, if you're working in a team and you need somebody to quickly jump in, relay some numbers, analyze something for you, have you utilized that highlight feature? They know exactly where to go. We have also mentioned this as well, but the alerts can be really useful. So, you know, you can create these anomaly detections for the sudden drop or spike in metrics. And why this is important is because it allows you to check the relevant reports. So rather than not knowing where to look, you know, if you're jumping into GA4 just to do a site audit or just to generally check your data, these alerts can actually guide you as to where to check, rather than just, you know, digging through data that you don't understand. So it's important to combine the library, the templates, and strategic reporting together, because they can sort of transform that metric mayhem and the reporting roadblocks much more clearly for you to have a better visual of what your website performance is doing and product performance and everything like that. A story time that we have again is, well, actually speaking to a lot of marketeers, they feel like they've hit a wall when they're trying to build their own custom reports. And then speaking to a client in particular, after migrating from UA to GA4, they wanted to create a really simple session source medium report. This used to be readily available in UA, especially with the fact they wanted conversions and revenue in one view. But with the GA4 sort of shift and jumping into this new interface, they had no clear starting point. And the client actually thought GA4 had lost their data. So we had a quick discussion with them. We understood what they needed to know for their business KPIs. And what we did was we could see that the data wasn't missing, but it was just hidden in a different structure. So we built a session source medium report, which was bespoke to them, because GA4 encourages that flexibility and that bespoke dashboard building. So although the GA4 blank slate approach may seem overwhelming, or even like a bit of a downgrade compared to the templates that you used to have readily available, it's important because it offers more flexibility. And in that report we built for the client, we then included much more relevant insights and metrics and dimensions to them that after speaking to them, we knew that they would need to know. So that's why using those GA4 reports is really important to embrace and not be almost afraid of or see them as a headache. That is why our secret is to use the library. So GA4, the library section, allows you to customize and manage all your dashboards in one place. Once set up, the library can ensure that everyone in the team is looking in one place. As I mentioned earlier, you know, you don't want different team members going off in GA4 not knowing where to look properly. So it can often help with reduced confusion and wasted time. So to do this, you need to find the library section in your GA4. So go to the left-hand panel, scroll down, and you should see the library icon at the bottom. So once you click into this, you'll be shown and introduced to loads of different bar charts, and it's a really easy sort of interface to understand how to navigate around, and you can pull all of these bar charts into one isolated report. So we suggest to use the library to make your GA4 more accessible, more consistent, and actionable for your team and your strategy. But user exploration when you need to dig deeper into like user behavior or that quicker real-time reporting to maybe answer those more specific or complex questions. But we think this is a powerful secret, because anything you add to the library can then be transported into your actual GA4 main hub. So in the left-hand side, where you're probably seeing the main default reports like traffic acquisition, user acquisition, event tables, stuff like that, you can transport these custom-made library reports and dashboards into that hub. We've done this for a client and they really valued it, especially because they operate globally. So we were able to highlight all the different countries in one easy view for them, without, again, this just like minimizing any confusion that the GA4 reports can cause. So we definitely recommend using that tool. Make sure you then transport it into the main GA4 sidebar, and everyone will be looking at the same thing, and hopefully easy to understand as well.
Thanks, Darcy. I think that's a really good secret, because the library is really useful in building those reports that anyone can access to. So one of the things that we've got here is that you can create whatever report you want in the library. You can have it hidden, and you can create anything that is important to you or your stakeholder or your team member that really wants that information. And as Darcy said, you can create something that's custom to that particular team. And then when they're happy with it, you add it to the main menu. And as Darcy said, where we work with a global client, in that menu, we have it split out by different continents and then by different countries. So anyone that has that one view or that one access to Google Analytics, they know exactly where they need to go to report on their country. And it's just a really nice way of completely customizing GA4 to how it works for you. Very conscious of time, but our final headache is segmentation insights. So one of the problems that we heard from our clients is the events that people are tracking. So everybody knows that they need to track events. What I mean by events is these little in that screenshot there, the events that come through in GA4 about what people are doing on your website. And that can be a purchase event or a generate lead event, or even something as simple as a page view. But what we're seeing is there are so many different events for so many different user behaviors across the website. We were getting clients going, we've got all of these events, what do we do with it? In this particular report in GA4, you can see the number of events that were fired, the number of events that were fired by a unique user, and if there's a value to that event, and a value would come through as well. But once you see that, what does it mean? Is there anything that it means that we're meant to do with it? So our remedy for this is to utilize these events to create segments in your reporting or audiences in GA4, which you can then share with your paid media team or any or even your social paid media team, so we can start to build audiences based on their behavior. Now, if we look at segmentation for the moment, if you were running that Explore report that we talked about earlier, you can add in as many dimensions and metrics as you want, including the events. Then you can create a segment that highlights users that have triggered those events in their purchase, in their journey. So what that means is you could see anyone that added something to the cart but then didn't purchase, or someone that viewed an item but didn't add to cart. So then you can start to understand, why are these users doing it? Are they doing it for a particular product? Are they following a certain journey? And you're starting to analyze what those users are doing on there. And then if you was to create audiences for that, you can then have a pot of audiences that add products to carts but don't purchase. You can speak to your paid media team to say, well, this is an audience that we can use to perhaps remarket to them, or feed that into Google Ads for Google Ads to learn.
Ian, so I was just going to jump in, actually. We've just done this for a client for Black Friday. And just to, obviously, everybody probably understands the stress of Black Friday. Having that audience ready and understanding that segmentation was really valuable for our paid media team. So I just, short on time, I know, but just make sure that you are utilizing that, because it can really pay off when it comes to anything such as like remarketing or for, you know, campaign performance and stuff. So just because it was so relevant, we've just done it this week and it's paid off. So yeah, it's really valuable. And so here in that screenshot, you can see the type of segmentations you can do in that report. So you can set them up in different steps. So session start is the first step, add to cart is the second step, and then where we've got purchase, you can also put that did not purchase in here. So you can really build this segmentation of users that you can then utilize in other platforms, or
or in your reporting. If you need to report to your stakeholders about how performance is on the website, GA4 really does understand user behavior in that sense. So just to finalize on that, step 1, navigate to the Explore report. Step 2, choose the segment section. Step 3, set your conditions of the segment, and then you can add your multiple conditions. Obviously, multiple is optional. You can literally just add one segment to it if you want. And you can save that segment for your reporting, which will then sit in your Explore library, or you can create an audience in the same way, which then you can then upload into Google Ads. Really powerful secret that allows GA4 to give you that information quite readily and easily.
Mm-hmm.
So that was it. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
That was really, really awesome, guys. Really practical, some really practical tips for GA4 of how to utilize it better, and some things that, well, in fact, we know from the Building Brands talk that people went away and actioned some of those things straight away. So I would say if anyone would like a copy of these slides, I'm able to send you them. So drop a comment, make sure that you are connected with me so that I can get your email address and send you across the slides. And if you've got any questions, we've run out of time now, but we can follow up and have a surgery session, or we can, you can drop into our messages and we can address it there. Thank you so much. And I really, really look forward to, in fact, we'll be launching our new launch website soon, our new one. And I know Conrad has been setting up all the tracking correctly. So I look forward to feeling a bit more confident about looking at our GA4. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Ian.